Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The Killer, a Korean action movie from 2022 that stars Jang Hyuk. And no, it is not a remake of the John Woo classic, so you could put your fears at ease. Our protagonist is a retired assassin who has settled down with his wife. One day, the wife goes on a holiday to Jeju with her best friend. And our main character is entrusted to take care of the 17-year-old stepdaughter of the best friend character. Though reluctant at first, he eventually gives in. Unfortunately for him, the girl gets herself into trouble with some criminals, and things go from bad to worse. And he's got to step up and kill a lot of people in her defense. So our protagonist is actually quite likable at the start of the movie. You know, he meets this teenage girl after his wife goes on vacation, and, you know, when he meets this girl, he does not rule over her with an iron fist or with tyranny, or treat her like a little kid. He actually respects her privacy, gives her some leeway right from the beginning, and trusts her to be responsible. He treats her like an adult, which, I remember when I was a teenager, I always liked that, when adults would treat you with respect and like an adult, right? Because we can handle ourselves. But she wants to sleep over at her friend's house on the first night. He agrees, and even gives her a little spending money so they can have a nice little dinner on their way there. So, dude's pretty cool. Now, this situation does benefit him to a degree because it relieves him of his duties for a little while. But still, pretty cool stuff. Now, unfortunately, he's dealing with a girl who gets herself into trouble. And this does happen. She even has a little bit of an attitude early on, but that actually dissipates fairly early. In her defense, she only makes a few mistakes early on, but after that, it's just like the situation spirals out of control, and she completely loses control of the situation, and he's got to step up and save her. Now, as you may have guessed, the script writing in this film, it's decent. I feel like there were some plot holes, if you really thought about it, especially in regard to consequences and possible blowback from events that happen. The police, for example, are present in the film, but they have, minimal influence outside of, one dirty cop who is somehow able to completely control the outcome of the investigation. It's kind of weird. It does feel kind of lazy in that regard. Kind of a lack of attention to detail in terms of story beats. And also, we've seen all of this stuff before. There's nothing in this movie that's really new. Definitely a familiarity to everything. Not especially creative or refreshingly different, but the script is still, it's decent enough and the actors do a good job. In the end, however, I don't think the story is something that is going to stick in your mind after you're done watching this. Now, in terms of the action, The Killer begins with a fight scene involving our lead as he severely injures some young delinquents using a hand axe. And this intro fight scene is very well shot, no choppy editing at all. I definitely perked up a bit while watching it. I feel like that opening segment was filmed better than most of the segments that follow it, but still, it's well executed overall. The first legit action set piece happens a little bit later, and it involves the infiltration of a criminal den, an apartment complex, where our protagonist has to take out a bunch of goons. Kind of a mix of close combat gunplay and hand-to-hand fighting involving axes and other small weapons. It's pretty fun to watch, and nicely violent, which is always nice. Like I said, camera work is good overall. At times, maybe it gets a little close, but overall, it's good. A few of the fights try to create a one-shot take experience without having to actually shoot a one-shot take, and that involves some editing gimmicks, some camera zooms in and out, but it does work. Certainly feels more natural than something like Carter, which I reviewed last year. The Killer has quite a bit of bloody violence. One of the coolest aspects is that our protagonist is completely ruthless towards the bad guys. The dude is a machine of death, And when he starts killing people, it's no mercy. It almost feels like he's going a little bit overboard. And this is our protagonist. It's there's times where I'm like, dude, did you really have to kill that guy? I mean, he's just a bodyguard, and he was down and out, and he like went out of his way to kill the guy. It's quite amusing, though. It is. On the negative side, I will say that there are a few special effects shots that look very weird, but they're very short. And we're talking seconds at most in length. Not a big deal. But I do think the action is satisfying, but I will say this. It's good, but it doesn't take anything to the next level in terms of being memorable or mind-blowing. I will say that overall, all the fights feel a little bit too easy for our protagonist. He's not really challenged much at any point in the movie. He just kicks everybody's butts. You know, there's like a super evil bodyguard dude who does put up a bit of a fight, thankfully, and he shows up multiple times, which I always like. But I still feel like there should have been a little bit more resistance from the bad guys. Also, the John Wick-inspired action design, of which this is definitely inspired, you could tell. I feel like it's getting a little bit old now. I do. It's, now don't get me wrong, you know, if we have to deal with cliches and tropes in movies, John Wick clones are the least of our worries. I mean, I'll take them. You know what I mean? I will take them. But still, it's been almost 10 years now of this. So the close combat gunplay is starting to feel a little bit stale in my eyes. I think it is. I think you gotta mix it up a little bit, create more consistent distance between people with guns, which is how you typically would use a gun, right? But just an observation. I'm starting to feel a little bit of the fatigue there. The runtime's only 1 hour and 36 minutes long, so pacing isn't that much of a problem, but I will say, this is not an action-packed thrill ride, this movie. You know, you get the brief intro fight, then you get like a whole half hour of setup, and then you have a really good series of action scenes right there, and then it slows down again for like another 20, 30 minutes before the finale. So there are a few like brief patches of slowness in this film, despite the runtime being very manageable. But overall, despite some of my criticisms, I do enjoy The Killer. It's a fun action movie. I'm just not sure I'm going to actively rewatch this a lot in the future. It's one of those films that like it's good for one watch and you'll like it, but I don't know if it really stands out enough to be in one of my rotations of movies that I watch like every year, you know. So I do recommend this. It is available streaming on a variety of streaming services, including YouTube, Amazon, and Tubi. So check it out if you have a few hours to spare for a pretty good action flick. And as always, I'll see you next time.